Today I'm going to show you how to make canned salsa. But what makes my salsa video different than the hundreds of other salsa videos on the internet? Well, for starters, I grow heirloom tomatoes. I'm also a hobby tomato breeder, which means I grow a wide variety of colors, shapes, and sizes of tomatoes. I also make my products using the Reber tomato strainer for both sauce and salsas, using 2 different screens on the machine. I'm pretty picky about my salsa recipes. In fact, I didn't do a lot of canning of salsa in years prior because I simply disliked the recipes that were approved for canning. I typically will follow recipes out of this book, or because my book is an older version, go to the website for Ball and they have more updated recipes. And that's where I found this recipe for this salsa. So I'm happy to say I finally have a salsa recipe that I like. Here's what it looks like all canned up and in the finished product. So let's take you along and show you how to make it. I use the Reber tomato strainer for all of my tomato processing. Here we have the 2 screens. The one on the left is the tomato and apple screen, so the holes are a very small diameter. The one on the right is the newly purchased pumpkin screen, so this can be used for pumpkin and salsa. As you can see, the holes are a larger diameter, which will create a chunkier sauce. This will allow the tomato seeds to pass through, whereas the left screen will not allow any seeds to pass through and will create a much smoother sauce. Next, we need to harvest all of those tomatoes and bring them into the house. As you can see, I do grow a lot of heirloom variety tomatoes, and I am a hobby tomato breeder, so I have many shapes, colors, and sizes. Choosing paste or semi-hollow varieties will result in a thicker salsa versus cherry or beefsteak. Next, we need to wash and chop all of the tomatoes. I like to fill them into 5-gallon food-grade buckets. Once all of the washing is completed, then I will move on to processing them in the Reber machine. The salsa screen is installed and the Reber is ready to go. Grab your 5-gallon food-safe bucket and start filling that fruit into the hopper. I do recommend pushing down on the stomper in order to release the juices into the machine prior to starting it up for the first time. Then power on. This will lubricate the machine before starting it. As you can see, the juices are starting to flow. I have 2 bowls below the machine. The bowl on the left will collect the pulp, and the bowl on the front is collecting the sauce. I have a full video on how to use the Reber machine for making regular tomato sauce. I will put a link in the video description. This is what the salsa looks like with 1 pass. We will do 2 passes with the Reber machine. When I used to use the Weston machine, I used to have to do 3 passes. Another perk for the Reber. Now you can see this first pass. Now we do the second pass. So take your bowl of pulp and dump it back into the hopper. This is where we run it through a second time. I must say that pushing the stomper through the second time is much easier compared to pushing it the first time. As we watch here, you can see that we will get quite a bit more sauce from the second pass. Therefore, if you only ran 1 time, you would be wasting quite a bit of food. What I also love about the Reber is that it is motorized. I used to use the Weston, which was a hand crank tomato strainer. I will say that the speed of this machine is pretty darn good. I actually spend more time harvesting and picking the tomatoes, hauling them into the house, and washing and chopping them. This part is actually the fast part. The color of sauce depends on the color of tomatoes that you are feeding into it. I often get a rainbow of colors, which you would see in my other Reber video. However, in this example, it is predominantly red in color. Of course, the pulp is a beautiful rainbow color as well. I just love all of the genetic diversity and beauty of the tomatoes, and especially all of the added health benefits as well. Here is the finished salsa. with 2 passes. It almost looks good enough to eat just by itself. Now that the sauce is made, we need to measure this for the recipe. I'm using a glass 1 cup measuring cup to measure the salsa. I am doing a double batch of salsa, which I found fits perfectly into a stock pot. So we will need to measure 22 1/2 cups of the salsa sauce. The glass measuring cup really makes this efficient. I'm actually standing on a stepladder while I'm doing this to save my shoulder. Once we have the 22 1/2 cups, I like to heat it on the stove while I'm preparing the other ingredients. Next, add 4 cups of corn. Second, add 2 cups of red onion chopped. I will have the written recipe in the description. No need to write it down right now. We can't have salsa without peppers. Here's my pepper garden from this summer. I grew about 200 plants of the sweet chocolate bell. I really like this variety. It was bred by Elwin Meader and introduced in 1965. It's an early bell that is great for short season northern climates. I like this variety so much that I decided to use it in a cross this year, using it as the paternal parent. Wash and chop your peppers. Here I have recruited my husband to help me with this task. Since we're making a lot of salsa, we're just going ahead and filling up multiple bowls of diced peppers. This variety has a dark chocolate exterior, and the interior is a brick red color. It really is quite stunning. Add 1 cup of chopped peppers to the pot. You don't have to use jalapenos or hot peppers. Use whatever you like to grow in your garden. Next, I'm cutting up the cilantro that I grew in my garden. I didn't quite have enough to get the full cup. It's best if you can do succession planting to ensure a continual harvest. Here I'm adding about 1/2 cup, up to 1 cup of cilantro. Next, we're adding 1 cup of lime juice. I really like recipes that use lime juice instead of lemon. The same goes for guacamole, in my opinion. The final ingredient is cayenne pepper, and we will need 2 teaspoons. Go ahead and add that to the pot, and admire how beautiful that pot of salsa looks. Give everything a good stirring. The next step will be simmering this on the stove for 5 to 10 minutes. I always do the 10 minutes, if not longer. The recipe calls for a water bath canner. No need to pressure cook, and the lime juice serves as the acidifier to make this safe for canning. While this was cooking, you should already be heating the jars and lids as well as the water bath canner so it's hot and ready to go. This recipe is only approved for pint jars and not quart jars. Ladle the hot salsa into the hot jars. I'm using a stainless steel funnel that I got on Amazon. I much prefer that instead of plastic. Once the jars are filled, we need to measure 1/2 inch headspace. So take your measuring tool and measure each and every jar. You may have to top some off to make it correct. Take a clean dish towel and wipe the rims. We don't want any food debris on the rims, which could inhibit a proper seal. Use the magnet tool to take all of your heated lids and place them onto the jars. I like to use a towel to hold the jar while I'm screwing on the band. Those jars are extremely hot. You can use either regular mouth or wide mouth jars. Place the jars in your canning rack and carefully lower into your canner. Make sure there is enough water covering the jars. Once this is boiling, the process time is 15 minutes. When the time is up, Turn off the flame and remove the lid. Wait 5 minutes before lifting the rack. The only thing this salsa is missing is some homemade guacamole to pair with it. The recipe and materials will be in the video description. Enjoy!